Hello everyone. The Honorable Finance Minister has presented the budget in the Parliament, and you will find many videos on YouTube analyzing the budget. But in this video, I want to look at the budget strictly from the exam point of view. All right. So the budget, of course, is prepared in the Ministry of Finance. Within the Ministry of Finance, there is Department of Economic Affairs, right? And within the Department of Economic Affairs, there is the budget division, which prepares the budget. Now, every year the budget is presented on 1st of February. And this year, the budget was also presented on the eve of Magh Purnima. So this was mentioned by the finance minister in her budget speech. तो एग्जाम के लिए relevant हो सकता है माघ पूर्णिमा. And also the birth anniversary of Guru Ravidas. तो इनका relevance देख लेना. Maybe a direct multiple choice questions in your prelims examination. All right. Now, before jumping into the provisions of the budget and the different announcements made in the budget, let's look at the context in which this budget is presented. Okay, so once you have an idea of what is happening at the global level, at the domestic national level, then the budget will make more sense, because budget essentially is the expression of the fiscal policy of the government. And the fiscal policy of the government, of course, is influenced by many factors. Okay, first let's see what is happening at the global level. Okay, अगर globally देखें तो of course you have various geopolitical conflicts happening. Okay, geopolitical conflicts हो रहे कहाँ. So there is conflict happening in Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine are in a war. There is conflicts happening in Middle East. Okay, and different players are involved here. There is conflict happening in Latin America. USA, attacked Venezuela. And there is various conflicts happening in other parts of the world also. Okay, so that is one. Of course, another factor is some unilateral measures taken by USA. Okay, so USA has imposed unilateral tariffs. So it started with reciprocal tariffs. Now there are also tariff-based penalties for having relationships with other countries. For example, tariffs on India for importing Russian oil. Now there is also a trend towards countries deciding to give more importance to their own strategic interest rather than economic interest. So you'll see China restricting export of rare earth minerals. Okay, so overall you see at the global level, trade and multilateralism is taking a back seat. Okay, and access to resources which was earlier freely available, or access to various international supply chains, has become limited or has been disrupted. Okay, so this is one thing that is happening. At the same time, there is a new technology which has come up, which is having a very large impact in the economies of all countries, that is artificial intelligence. Okay, so this new technology is transforming production, transforming systems across the countries. Now this new technology also demands a lot of resources in the form of water, energy, and critical minerals. So that is another factor. Now what is happening at the domestic level? Okay, now domestically, of course, India has the distinction of being the fastest growing large economy. So India is the fastest growing large economy. So we have various needs. Okay, we have needs of economic growth, At the same time, we want to be connected with other countries in terms of trade. We want to attract a lot of investments, so we want to do trade. We want to attract investments. Okay. At the same time, looking at the direction in which all the countries across the world are moving, we also want to become self-sufficient. Okay, so Atmanirbharta is also one of the major goals of the government. Okay, now for this, of course, we'll have to balance the our interests in economic growth, at the same time have to maintain overall macroeconomic stability so that we remain a lucrative destination for different investments from different parts of the world. Okay, apart from that, of course, we have our demographic dividend. Now, what is demographic dividend? Of course, the large youth population that we have. Now, this youth population, of course, this population has to be skilled, but also has to be provided with jobs. So, job creation is a major goal of the government. Okay, now this demographic dividend and job creation has to be achieved in an inclusive manner. Okay, that's the goal of our present government, whose motto is Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas, right? So the growth has to be inclusive. So this is the context in which this budget is presented. Now, of course, an additional factor is that since the COVID-19 year, right? COVID based lockdown. So the lockdown was in 2020. 2020 lockdown was there, and in that year, of course, the government had to resort to fiscal stimulus. So it borrowed a lot of money from domestic sources and international sources, and that pushed the fiscal deficit to very high levels. And after that, we have been in a path of what is known as fiscal consolidation. Fiscal consolidation. In this path of fiscal consolidation, the government is trying to bring the fiscal deficit down to certain levels, and also the debt to GDP ratio down to certain levels. Okay, so this is the context in which the government has presented the budget. Okay, now before moving on to the various provisions and various announcements made in the budget, I want to look at the numbers. Okay, let's look at some of the numbers and trends which has come out from this budget. Okay, so let's look at this fiscal matters. So now, first thing, the 16th Finance Commission. So Honorable Finance Minister announced that the 16th Finance Commission ने जो recommendations दिया था, that has been accepted, and the vertical share of devolution. So the Finance Commission, of course, recommends what will be the formula for devolution of taxes between state and the center. So the vertical devolution is the share of states would be 41%. That has been accepted by the state. So this information you should know. In fact, you should go through the recommendations of the Finance Commission and look at various provisions there, because that could be important for your prelims examination. Okay, now let's look at the numbers. Have we been able to succeed in achieving our targets in the path towards fiscal consolidation? Okay, now until last year, the government was targeting fiscal deficit. Okay, so fiscal deficit last year was 4.4% of GDP. And this year, the government has succeeded. The government has given a budget estimate of 4.3%. So the fiscal deficit has reduced. And now our target for fiscal consolidation, our primary target would be achieving a debt to GDP ratio. And the target we have set for ourselves is 50% plus minus 1% by 2030. Okay. And the current debt to GDP ratio is 56.1% is the revised estimate for 2025-26, And the budget estimate for 26-27, the government has set it to be 55.6%, which is okay, क्योंकि अभी नेक्स्ट ईयर 55.6% होगा, तो धीरे धीरे 1% करके अगर कम करेंगे तो by 2030 I think we should be able to reach our target of 50% plus minus 1%. Okay, look at these deficit trends. So the fiscal deficit, at least ये last 5 साल का data है, तो fiscal deficit has been decreasing, and similarly other deficits also. So revenue deficits, primary deficits, effective revenue deficits, all the deficits has been decreasing, which means that the government by and large has been able to has been successful in achieving fiscal consolidation. Okay, now here of course you should know the formulas of fiscal deficit. जैसे fiscal deficit क्या होता है, it is the borrowing requirements of the government, right? तो जितना expenditure होता है minus the revenue receipts, तो rest of the debt receipts is, or the borrowing requirements, that is the fiscal deficit. Similarly, you should know what is revenue deficit, primary deficit, and effective revenue deficit, because even in 2025 there was a application based question which could be easily solved if you just knew the formula. Also, you don't have to remember the numbers by itself ki फिर revenue deficit कितना है, primary deficit, effective revenue deficit कितना है. The numbers by itself is not very important, but at least you should know the trend. If they ask if a UPSC forms a statement, frames a statement like the fiscal deficit has been reducing in the past 5 years, so that will be a true statement. अगर past 10 years हो जाएगा तो of course that will be a false statement, because 2020 में 2020 was a exceptional year, COVID year, and उस समय fiscal deficit काफ़ी increase हुआ था. Okay, also you should know that the fiscal deficit का जो value है, that is greater than revenue deficit, is greater than primary deficit, is greater than effective revenue deficit. Okay, so this is this has been more or less the case for all years. Okay, next look at this. This is very interesting कि जो गवर्नमेंट को जितना receipts आ रहा है, where is that receipts coming from? Okay, now you should know that most of the receipt that is received by the government is from the tax revenue sources. Okay, so you see corporation tax accounts for 18%, income tax 21%, GST 15%, customs 4%, and union excise duties 6%. So these 5 taxes are the most important taxes for the government. Of course, the government levies other taxes also, for example capital gains tax or securities transaction tax and everything. But these 5 taxes are the most important taxes from which the most revenues come to the government. तो इसमें भी so last year GST was slightly higher, but the government is expecting the collection to be slightly lower, which I think is due to GST rationalization. Again, the numbers not that important, but at least you should know which tax is giving most revenue to the government. So सबसे ज़्यादा revenue income tax से आ रहा है. This is at number 1. Then corporation tax at number 2. So both income tax and corporation tax are direct taxes, right? So the government is getting more revenue from direct taxes than indirect taxes, and which is good because direct taxes are progressive taxes. तो direct tax का burden अमीर लोगों पे ज़्यादा आता है, and that is good for the economy क्योंकि गरीबों पे कम pressure आएगा. Whereas the indirect taxes are regressive taxes. The burden of indirect taxes as a proportion of their total income is more on the poorer people, and therefore these are regressive, तो उसका revenue कम है direct taxes से, which is good. तो number 3 पे GST है, and then at number 4 is union excise duties. Union excise duty, of course the excise duty is now subsumed in GST for most of the goods and services, but still few goods like fuel, petrol, diesel, I think alcohol, tobacco products, उसमें excise duties लगता है, and those are big sources of revenue for the government. And then at number 5 is customs. Customs duties, of course, levied on exports and imports of goods. Okay. Then 24% of the money is coming from borrowings and liabilities. Okay. So, of course, the government borrows a lot of money from domestic sources and international sources, mostly from the domestic sources. Around, I think, 95% of the debt of the government is from domestic sources through issuing of government securities and treasury bills and all that. तो वहाँ से 24% आ रहा है. Then non-tax revenues. Okay, non-tax revenues, which is revenues from maybe some fines, challans, fees, all that are non-tax revenues coming to the government. Profits of various services provided by the government, like railways, post office, or even public sector undertakings, तो वो around 10% है. And non-debt capital receipt is only 2%. So non-debt capital receipts such as your disinvestments, right? So that is not a very big source of revenue for the government. Now, where is government spending its money? Okay, government खर्च कहाँ करेगी? So maximum 22% will go to the state share of taxes. So state ko, of course, the center has to give them their share from the central divisible pool of tax. So 22% वहाँ जाएगा. Then 20%, of course, the government has been borrowing a lot of money, तो उनको interest payment करना है, returns on government securities, treasury bills, तो 20% वहाँ जाएगा. Apart from that, you have finance commission mandated transfers will be another 7%. And then the schemes. So centrally sponsored scheme 8% and central sector schemes 17%. So a total of 25% goes in the government schemes. Okay. And subsidies is 6%. Now this, of course, is the government is trying to reduce this rationalized subsidies. तो 6% से कम करने का ट्राई करें, बट ठीक है, अभी 6% है. Of course, expenditure on defense is another big expenditure, around 11% there. And then pensions 2% and other expenditure is 7%. So this is how the government is spending its money. Okay. Now let's look at the trends of the receipts and expenditures. Okay. Now, if you know, of course, I'm not going to explain you the theory related to the budget, but you know that the budget is broadly divided into the revenue and the capital, revenue budget and the capital budget. Okay. So in the receipt side, you have your capital receipts and revenue receipts. Revenue receipts are income that is recurring for the government. So for example, your tax revenue receipts, because tax revenue, of course, government can expect to earn every year, and similarly non-tax revenue receipts are there. तो यहाँ पे अगर ट्रेंड देखा जाए रेवेन्यू रिसीट्स का, तो यू कैन सी दैट इट हैज़ बिन इंक्रीजिंग एवरी ईयर. ये मत सोचना यहाँ से कम हुआ है, बिकॉज दीज आर फॉर द सेम ईयर्स. ओके, ये 2025-26 का बजट एस्टिमेट है एंड ये 25-26 का रिवाइज्ड एस्टिमेट है. ओके, व्हेन द गवर्नमेंट अनाउंसेस द बजट for the next financial year, so the government gives a budget estimate. Okay, and next year, of course, the government has a more accurate picture of how much expenditure or receipt has been there, and वो एक revised estimate देती है, and then next year the government will give the actual value. So that will be actuals. So this year, of course, the government has given the actual value of 24-25, revised estimate of 25-26, and budget estimate of 26-27. And उसमें देखा जाए तो of course revenue receipts as expected, because as the economy grows, the government can expect to earn more revenue from taxes, even non-tax sources. तो वो increase हो रहा है, which is good. The government does want to increase its revenue from tax sources, and tax sources are the biggest source of revenue for the government. तो वो increase हो रहा है. Also, the capital receipts was in fact equal for 25-26 and 24-25. The revised estimate में of course next year the actual figure will maybe slightly different, तो कम ज़्यादा हो सकता है. But this year again the government wants to at least earn more from capital receipts also. Now, capital receipts, of course, are non-recurring sources of income. तो capital receipt जैसे disinvestments, the government disinvests some of its stakes from public sector enterprises. ठीक है, तो अब वो एक ही चीज़ को हर साल तो नहीं बेच सकते हैं, तो these incomes are limited and इसमें ज़्यादा स्कोप भी नहीं होता है गवर्नमेंट के पास, तो ठीक है. कैपिटल रिसीट का जो ट्रेंड है वो कुछ क्लियर नहीं है हमें, एंड therefore will not make any prediction here, but revenue receipt has been increasing, which is important because tax revenue has been increasing. All right, the numbers by itself does not matter, तो नंबर याद रखने का ज़रूरत नहीं है, but trend पता होना चाहिए. Okay, if we see the trend of expenditures, okay, and this is very important because expenditure में both revenue expenditure also increasing and effective capital expenditure is also increasing. Now revenue expenditure जो होता है, these are recurring expenditures of the government, जैसे expenditure on salary, expenditure on defense, expenditure on public administration, police. तो ये मोस्टली आर वेरी कमिटेड एक्सपेंडिचर्स, गवर्नमेंट को करना ही करना है इसमें. द गवर्नमेंट डज नॉट हैव मच विगल रूम हियर except maybe expenditure on subsidies. Okay, so subsidies में गवर्नमेंट कम कर सकती है. Also revenue expenditure are generally called non-productive expenditure. Okay, why non-productive expenditure? Because इससे कुछ वैल्यू क्रिएट नहीं होता है, राइट. देर इज़ नो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बिंग क्रिएटेड ईयर. अगर गवर्नमेंट रोड्स बनाती, रेलवेज बनाती, वेयर हाउसेज, एयरपोर्ट्स, तो वो वैल्यू क्रिएट, दैट वुड इंक्रीज द इकोनॉमिक कैपेसिटी ऑफ द कंट्री, एंड दैट इज कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर से कुछ असेट क्रिएट नहीं होता है, एंड देयरफॉर इट इज़ जनरली कॉल्ड नॉन प्रोडक्टिव एक्सपेंडिचर. तो इसके लिए गवर्नमेंट of course wants to reduce its revenue expenditure, but most of these expenditure are very committed in nature. गवर्नमेंट को सैलरी देना ही है, पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में, डिफेंस में, पुलिस में, इन सब चीज़ों में खर्चा करना ही है, तो इसमें ज़्यादा विगल रूम नहीं होता है. ऑफ कोर्स द गवर्नमेंट कैन ट्राई टू एटलीस्ट rationalize some of its revenue expenditure, particularly subsidies. Okay, so subsidies कम कर सकती है गवर्नमेंट, and the government also tries to reduce or rationalize some subsidies. But the overall trend, of course, with the growing economy is going to be increasing revenue expenditure. Now, effective capital expenditure, and इस पे हमेशा बहुत ज़्यादा focus होता है, because capital expenditure is government spending on infrastructure. Okay, big projects, building roads, railways, so increasing the economic capacity of the country. तो वो, as we can see, again has been increasing, and in fact this has been a trend in fact in the past several years, particularly after COVID. Okay, COVID के बाद government has accelerated its rate of increase of capital expenditure, and again जो effective capital expenditure है, that is capital expenditure plus the grants given to states for capital expenditure. तो वो दोनों मिला के effective capital expenditure है, and that has been increasing. Okay, so this trend, of course, you should know that effective capital expenditure is increasing. Okay, now this of course is a graph of trend in net receipts of center. So of course you can see जो सेंटर का नेट टैक्स रेवेन्यू है वो इंक्रीज हो रहा है. टैक्स रेवेन्यू इज द येलो बार्स, वो इंक्रीज हो रहा है. नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू भी इंक्रीज हो रहा है. ओके, एंड नॉन डेट कैपिटल रिसीट्स, नॉन डेट कैपिटल रिसीट्स का कोई स्पेसिफिक ट्रेंड नहीं है. कुछ सालों में कम हुआ फिर बढ़ा, क्योंकि नॉन डेट कैपिटल रिसीट इज जनरली द डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट प्रोसीड्स ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट, एंड डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट प्रोसीड्स के लिए ऑफ कोर्स द गवर्नमेंट विल हैव टू सेल ऑफ इट्स स्टेक्स इन पब्लिक सेक्टर एंटरप्राइजेस, जो हर साल नहीं कर सकते. तो इसका कोई स्पेसिफिक ट्रेंड नहीं है, बट एटलीस्ट दीज टू, ओके, रेवेन्यू रिसीट्स हैज़ बिन इंक्रीजिंग, एंड दैट इज एक्सपेक्टेड एज द इकोनॉमी इज ग्रोइंग. ओके, total transfer to states and union territories, of course, that has been increasing every year. Okay, Now this here gives an idea of what are the priorities of our government. Okay, तो कहाँ सबसे ज़्यादा गवर्नमेंट खर्च कर रही है. Okay, and you see the maximum expenditure of the government is happening in transport. Okay, which means the government is creating infrastructure, the government is building roads, the government is spending on railways, civil aviation, ports, inland waterways. तो वहाँ सबसे ज़्यादा खर्च कर रही है. That is the priority number one, because that increases the production capacity, also generates a lot of jobs. Okay, makes the economy much more efficient. Then number two is defense. Of course, defense has to be a priority given the geopolitical conflicts that is happening, and also skirmishes with our neighbors. तो defense में खर्च करना है. Then rural development, home affairs, of course home affairs में मतलब internal security, law and order में. And then agriculture, education, energy, health. So this gives an idea of where the priority of the government lies. So priority number one, of course, is infrastructure, then security of the nation, then the villages, rural development, then agriculture, education, energy, health, all that. Okay, and of course all these are important for the country. The country wants to grow at a fast rate, wants to achieve the status of Viksit Bharat by 2047, but it wants to do that by taking everyone along with it. So there has to be sabka saath, sabka vikas, and therefore lot of investment in rural development, also agriculture, education, health, right? Okay, all right, so we have seen the numbers that has emerged from this budget and the trends, and the numbers and trends shows that the government has succeeded in following the path of fiscal consolidation. That is number one. And second important number that has come out is that government has further increased its capital expenditure. So there will be more capital expenditure, which of course will increase the production capacity or efficiency of the economy. All right, now that we have seen that, let's dive into the various provisions and announcement made in the budget by our honorable finance minister. Okay, so finance minister says that the vision of the government of Viksit Bharat is not just ambition, but it is balancing ambition with inclusion. Okay, so we want to achieve high growth rate, but we want to do it in an inclusive manner. We want to take along all, even the most disadvantaged sections of the society. Okay, farmers, women, disabled people, even the less developed regions of our country like the northeast and other remote areas. Okay, so the agenda is very straightforward: action over ambivalence, reform over rhetoric, and people over populism. And the aim is to transform aspirations into achievements and potential into performance. ठीक है, ये सब बोलने के लिए अच्छा रहता है. So what the government wants to do, and this we have also already discussed, that we want to achieve stability, right? Overall macroeconomic stability. Why? Because we want to attract investments. Investments attract तभी कर पाएंगे when the economy will be very stable. A stable economy also lends itself to a lot of economic activities. तो प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट भी इंक्रीज होगा, फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट भी इंक्रीज होगा. सो स्टेबल इकोनॉमी इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड उसके लिए फिस्कल डिसिप्लिन is very important. So by fiscal discipline means adhering to the target set by the government. The government is setting itself a target of fiscal consolidation by setting targets of fiscal deficit or debt to GDP ratio. तो वो achieve करना है, which the government, the present government has been able to do quite consistently. Okay. Sustained growth again very important because 2047 तक विकसित भारत बनना है तो sustained growth चाहिए. Have been growing at an average of 7%. Now we want to further increase this rate of growth, right? And this rate of growth will be increased if we increase the productivity of our economy and also efficiency of our economy. And moderate inflation. In fact, the last year, the calendar year 2025 will see that inflation has come down quite a bit. So the government wants to continue with moderate inflation and not let inflation rise too much. Okay. अब देखो, अगर हाई ग्रोथ रेट 7% के करीब हमें मेंटेन करना है इन द फ्यूचर, देन दीज थिंग्स आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. वन ऑफ कोर्स इज एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी. ओके, जितना ज़्यादा रेट से इकॉनमी ग्रो करेगी, एनर्जी नीड्स उतना ज़्यादा होगा एंड एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी ज़रूरी है. एंड देयरफॉर we cannot compromise with our national interest, so we have to import oils, crude oil from different parts of the world. We also have to focus on nuclear energy. Even fossil fuel को भी पूरी तरह से let go नहीं कर सकते. Renewable sources of energy, solar, wind energy, तो energy security चाहिए हमें. Okay. Then reduced critical import dependencies. जो हमारा import dependency on a lot of things, that has to be reduced. And why? Because the country, India as a country, wants to achieve strategic independence, right? So India as a country wants to achieve strategic independence, and therefore we have to reduce our dependence on import of critical commodities like rare earth minerals. Okay. And in this day and age, in this age of artificial intelligence, digitalization, rare earth minerals has become a very, very crucial commodity जिसमें India is very much still dependent on import, particularly from China, and that has to be reduced. Also, our import dependence on oil. So we have to diversify because India में उतना ज़्यादा oil produce नहीं होता है, but we also have to look at domestic sources of crude oil. Okay. Then far-reaching structural reforms. Of course, a lot of things that is preventing India from achieving very high rates of growth is lack of these reforms. Okay, so we have various inefficiencies in our system, lot of compliances, lot of rules and regulations, penalties, all these things are there, and उसके कारण हम अपना full potential reach नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. तो structural reforms चाहिए. Fiscal prudence, of course, we have talked about that. We have to maintain stability, okay, overall macroeconomic stability, low inflation or moderate inflation, exchange rate stability, and for that we need to adhere to fiscal prudence, even monetary stability. So even the policy of the RBI, okay, monetary policy is decided by the RBI. So even RBI has to ensure that there is monetary stability. There is, the exchange rate is stable. The inflation is between the tolerance band of RBI, that is 2% to 6%. There has to be strong thrust on public investment. जितना ज़्यादा public investment होगा, of course, it directly increases or gives stimulus to the economy, leads to a lot of job creation, but also crowds in private investment. Okay, the public investment, and then citizens benefit from government actions. So the government actions, whatever government action is being taken or various policy or schemes run by the government, उसका benefit citizens को मिलना चाहिए. Okay, all the citizens and not just a small group of citizens. And domestic manufacturing capacity has to be increased. In fact, this is one of the major lacunas so far in the Indian economy, that our manufacturing has not kept up. Okay, our manufacturing still accounts for only around 12% of our GDP, which is very low, and we want to increase it to maybe around 20, even 25%. Okay, so these are the things we have to look at. Now, our Honorable Finance Minister said that the theme of this budget is Yuva Shakti driven budget. Okay, so uh, a lot of announcements and provisions has been made for the youth, because we want to take benefit of our demographic dividend. अगर demographic dividend का पूरा फायदा नहीं उठा पाए तो this can become a demographic disaster for us, right? And therefore we have to ensure that our youth population is properly educated, is in good health, have industry relevant skills, and there is availability of jobs. Okay, all right. And the government's sankalp, the government has pledged to focus on poor, underprivileged, and disadvantaged, as discussed, sabka saath, sabka vikas. Okay, now the budget. So this was the first budget that was prepared in Kartavya Bhavan. Kartavya Bhavan is the new building for the Ministry of Finance, and therefore the Honorable Finance Minister said that she has three kartavyas that has to be fulfilled. Okay, the first one is sustained accelerate and sustain economic growth. Second is fulfill aspirations of our people. Okay, so the people have aspirations that has to be fulfilled. So the capacity building, people का जो capacity building है वो increase करना है, to make them partners for the partners in the path to prosperity. Okay, and the third kartavya is of course inclusive growth, sabka saath sabka vikas. So ensure that every family, every community, every region, sectors have access to resources and meaningfully participate in the economy. Okay, so these are the three major goals of the government that has been expressed in the budget. Okay, now how to achieve this? Okay, to achieve this, the government needs, or the country needs, a supportive ecosystem, right? And वो ecosystem कैसे create होगा? Through this. Okay, sustaining the momentum of structural reforms. So reforms लाना है, make it easier for people to do business. तो ease of doing business better होना चाहिए, ease of living better होना चाहिए, more and more infrastructure has to be created. All those things has to be done. Okay, so this reforms has to be continuous. This reform should not be ad hoc कि एक बार थोड़ा सा रिफॉर्म किया अब रुक जाते हैं. It has to be continuous for the momentum to build. Okay, adaptive to various changing conditions and forward looking. Then the country also needs a robust and resilient financial sector. Why a robust and resilient financial sector? Because financial sector plays a very important role. Okay, financial sector का role होता है to take the savings of the households and transfer it to people who will use them in businesses and creating factories, creating more jobs. Okay, so mobilizing savings and allocating capital efficiently and managing risks. So that is why we need a resilient financial sector. And then also focus on cutting edge technologies, because again we are living in an era of very high changes in technology and a lot of innovative disruptive technologies that are coming in, particularly artificial intelligence, and they can act as force multiplier for better governance. Okay, force multiplier in sense that अगर artificial intelligence हम leverage करें in different sectors, maybe health, education, skilling, so of course they can lead to much better outcomes. Okay, so इस direction में क्या क्या हो रहा है? And now of course here I want to say that जो गवर्नमेंट होती है वो बजट अनाउंस करती है एंड इट इज़ इट्स प्लान फॉर द नेक्स्ट फाइनेंशियल ईयर. ओके, And of course, a lot of announcements are made, lot of different provisions are there in the budget. Not all of them are important from the exam point of view. एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू के लिए सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है, बट थिंग्स दैट आई थिंक could be useful for your prelims examination in particular, but also your mains examination. We will discuss that. Okay. So first of course is how India is adopting new and new reforms. तो जैसे हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने लास्ट 15 अगस्त के दिन in his speech made an announcement of various reforms. Those reforms has been rolled out. Over 350 reforms has been rolled out. Particularly, the most important is GST simplification. Okay, GST simplification was a major tax reform that was brought by the government, and I think this could be useful for your prelims examination. So do check out कि 5% वाले स्लैब में कौन से गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज आ रहे हैं, 18% वाले स्लैब्स में कौन से गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज हैं, बिकॉज द GST का जो ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन हुआ है फ्रॉम अ 4 स्लैब टू 2 स्लैब, तो 5% एंड 18% में कौन से गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज आ रहे हैं उसका ध्यान रखना चाहिए. बिकॉज आई थिंक जब GST इनिशियली रोल आउट हुआ था 2017 में, सो देयर एट दैट टाइम देयर वाज अ क्वेश्चन. ओके, तो अभी मेजर चेंज हुआ है तो ये पता होना चाहिए. ओके, ऑल्सो अनदर मेजर रिफॉर्म वॉज नोटिफिकेशन ऑफ लेबर कोड्स. ओके, सो अर्लियर ऑफ कोर्स देयर वर सो मैनी लेबर कोड्स, उनको कंडेंस करके 4 लेबर कोड बना, बहुत सारे लेबर लॉस थे, उनको कंडेंस करके 4 लेबर कोड्स बनाए गए. तो डू लुक एट दोज लेबर कोड्स. इट्स ऑल्सो देयर इन द इकोनॉमिक इंडियन इकॉनमी हैंडबुक एंड द सेकेंड एडिशन, उसमें ये दिया हुआ है, तो यू कैन लुक एट दोज लेबर कोड्स. ओके, अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट सम हाई लेवल कमिटीज, ड्यू रेगुलेशंस, reforms has been brought in. वो I don't think that is as important, but यहाँ पे GST simplification and labor code, 2 things that I do think is important for your prelims examination. Okay, now talking about the first kartavya, right? Achieving high and resilient growth. तो वो growth कैसे achieve होगा? How will, first of course is the aim to achieve sustaining the economic growth and economic growth at high levels, right, around 7%. उसके लिए of course will have to strengthen the foundations of the growth. Okay, what are the foundations of the growth? Economic stability, good infrastructure, high efficiency, more skilled labor force. So these are the foundations of the growth. तो उसको strengthen करना है. Then the development has to be people centric. Okay, so special focus on the disadvantaged sections of the society, उनको साथ में लेके चलना है. Then there should be a shift from earlier system rule based governance to more trust based governance. Okay, and international level पे भी global experience भी ये कहता है कि जब trust based governance पे ज़्यादा focus रहता है गवर्नमेंट का, तो it gives rise to better outcomes. Okay, so rather than imposing penalties or imposing punishments on the people, if you just tell them, okay, you have to pay fine and there is decriminalization of certain offenses, or turning penalties into just fees, all these things help in improving the governance. Then the focus also has to be in ease of doing business and ease of living. So make life easier for the people. Okay, why to create unnecessary hassles for the public? उनका life easy करो. Those who are trying to do business, make it easier for them to do business. Make it easy for them to create value in the economy. Okay, and the last, of course, the fiscal consolidation. This we have already discussed. Okay. So the first kartavya, that was sustaining economic growth. Let's talk about that. Okay, and the government in this budget has identified areas in which this high growth can come from. Okay, and the first area that they have identified is manufacturing. Now manufacturing is very important because number one, we are lagging in manufacturing. The manufacturing accounts for only around 12% of the GDP, and because manufacturing is very labor intensive and gives rise to a lot of job creation, manufacturing में बहुत focus है government का. Okay, so the government has identified within manufacturing various sectors जहाँ पे focus किया जा सकता है. Okay, for example, biopharma shakti. Okay, now biopharma shakti is one place where the government thinks that a lot of a lot of developments can happen. Okay, the Shakti stands for Strategy for Healthcare Advancement through Knowledge, Technology and Innovation. Okay, तो अगर याद रख सकते हो तो याद रखना. Now why biopharma is so important? Because you see India का जो disease burden है, it is going through a shift. Okay, now our disease burden is very observably shifting towards non-communicable diseases. What are these non-communicable diseases? Diseases like diabetes, cancer, okay, autoimmune disease, इस तरफ शिफ्ट हो रहा है. ओके, एंड हियर बायोलॉजिक मेडिसिन्स, जो बायोलॉजिक मेडिसिन्स होते हैं वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. लॉन्जेविटी एंड टू इम्प्रूव द क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ एट अफोर्डेबल कॉस्ट. Okay, so for this the government has announced to develop India as a global biopharma manufacturing hub. Okay, now we are already known as the pharmacy of the world, but अब हमें बायोफार्मा मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब भी बनाना है. ओके, एंड क्रिएट एन इकोसिस्टम फॉर डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्शन ऑफ बायोलॉजिक्स एंड बायोसिमिलर्स. इनफैक्ट मुझे लगता है कि बिकॉज दीज आर न्यू टर्म्स दैट आर इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इन द बजट, मतलब न्यू टर्म्स तो नहीं है, बट since these are terms introduced in the budget, this could be important for your prelims examination. What are biologics and what are biosimilars? तो इनका डिफरेंस एक बार देख लेना. वेरी स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड प्रीलिम्स क्वेश्चन कैन बी फ्रेम्ड ऑन दिस. ऑलराइट, इसके अलावा क्लिनिकल ट्रायल साइट्स विल बी सेट अप. जो इनका जो रेगुलेटर है, द सेंट्रल ड्रग स्टैंडर्ड कंट्रोल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, उनको भी स्ट्रेंथन किया जाएगा. सो दैट इज़ बायोफार्मा शक्ति. देन अनदर area in manufacturing where there is focus of the government is the semiconductor sector. Okay, so here the government has announced India Semiconductor Mission 2.0. Okay, then another area will be this high-tech tool rooms in CPSCs will be set up. What are these high-tech tool rooms? इसमें जैसे जो हाई प्रेसिजन कंपोनेंट्स होते हैं, राइट, हाई प्रेसिजन कंपोनेंट्स को प्रोड्यूस किया जाएगा लोकली डिज़ाइन भी किया जाएगा, टेस्ट किया जाएगा, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग किया जाएगा एट अ वेरी लार्ज स्केल एंड इट विल ऑल्सो लोअर द कॉस्ट. ओके, सो दिस विल हेल्प इन क्रिएशन ऑफ दीज कैपिटल गुड्स, जिसका हमें काफ़ी ज़रूरत है, बिकॉज कैपिटल गुड्स इज़ यूज्ड फॉर क्रिएशन ऑफ अदर गुड्स इन द इकॉनमी, राइट. एंड हाई टेक टूल रूम्स if we are able to establish, then it will help our manufacturing sector a lot. Okay, then another scheme that was announced was scheme for container manufacturing. ठीक है, containers जो ships में use होते हैं उसको manufacturing किया जाएगा. Then an integrated program for textiles. Alright, एक integrated टेक्सटाइल का, बिकॉज टेक्सटाइल इज अगेन अ वेरी लेबर इंटेंसिव सेक्टर, बहुत सारा जॉब क्रिएशन हो सकता है. ओके, तो इसमें एक नेशनल फाइबर स्कीम हैज़ बीन अनाउंस्ड, फाइबर स्कीम, has been announced. तो नेशनल फाइबर जो नेचुरल फाइबर्स होते हैं जैसे सिल्क, वुल, जूट, इवन सब मैन मेड फाइबर्स, न्यू एज फाइबर्स हैं, तो उनमें इंडिया को सेल्फ रिलायंट होना है, तो एक नेशनल फाइबर स्कीम अनाउंस किया गया है. Then within this program there will be modernization of traditional clusters, एक national handloom and handicraft program होगा, a tax eco initiative for sustainable textiles, so that has also been announced, and Samarth 2.0. Okay, this was announced by the honorable finance minister in her budget speech. तो क्योंकि इसका नाम काफ़ी यूनिक है, मुझे लगता है कि ये प्रीलिम्स एग्जामिनेशन के लिए इम्पोर्टेंट हो सकता है. Samarth 2.0. Okay, now this Samarth 2.0 is for modernizing and upgrading the textile skilling ecosystem. Okay, तो इसमें कोलैबोरेशन होगा इंडस्ट्री का भी, एकेडमिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस का भी, एंड थ्रू विच लॉट ऑफ दीज वर्कर्स विल बी स्किल्ड इन वेरियस टेक्सटाइल बेस्ड स्किल्स. तो दैट इज समर्थ 2.0. क्योंकि ये नाम थोड़ा यूनिक है, देयर कैन बी अ डायरेक्ट मल्टीपल चॉइस क्वेश्चन हियर, सो यू शुड नो दिस. Apart from that, there is an electronic components manufacturing schemes that has been announced. ठीक है, तो electronic components India does want to become self-reliant यहाँ पे, तो ये announce हुआ है. Then strengthening domestic manufacturing of high-value technologically advanced construction and infrastructure equipment. Alright, जो high-value technologically advanced कंस्ट्रक्शन है उसको स्ट्रेंथन किया जाएगा. रिवाइव 2000 लेगेसी इंडस्ट्रियल क्लस्टर्स, तो काफ़ी जो लेगेसी इंडस्ट्रियल क्लस्टर्स है विच हैज़ ओवर टाइम बिकम इनएफिशिएंट, तो उनको रिवाइव किया जाएगा. स्पोर्ट्स गुड्स, ओके, सो वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग दैट दिस ईयर इन द बजट स्पेशल मेंशन हैज़ बीन गिवन टू स्पोर्ट्स गुड्स एंड उनका मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए एक इनिशिएटिव लाया गया है. ओके, देन सम डेडिकेटेड केमिकल पार्क्स will also be set up. Okay, particularly 3 chemical parks set up किए जाएंगे. Then scheme for rare earth permanent magnets, research, mining, processing and manufacturing. Now here of course because we are so much dependent on import dependent on rare earth minerals, that ये एक special scheme लाया government so as to become more and more self-reliant in this direction. Okay, all right, now there are also some tax reforms that has been announced to boost the manufacturing sector. So what are these various tax reforms? Now again a slew of tax reforms has been announced, and I don't think all of them are important from your exam point of view, because a lot of exemptions has been given, duty free imports of lots of, because manufacturing में of course you need a lot of raw materials or intermediate goods which has to be imported, तो उसमें बहुत सारे exemptions and duty free imports ये सारे दिए गए हैं. exemptions on manufacturing microwave ovens, aircraft manufacturing करना है तो उसमें exemption दिया गया है, aircraft parts. All right, but few things here which I do think can be important from your prelims point of view is one, this. Okay, and I mean जो बात कर रहे थे ना ट्रस्ट बेस्ड गवर्नेंस, तो जो ट्रस्टेड मैन्युफैक्चरर्स हैं, okay, the manufacturers who over the time has established trust with the government, so they will get some added benefits. Okay, there is also provision of safe harbor. Now here of course the provisions of course not important, but you should know what is this safe harbor provisions. Okay, तो ये पता होना चाहिए तुम लोगों को. And generally, so I'll explain it to you. Generally क्या होता है कि suppose there is a company in India, इंडिया में एक कंपनी है, एंड देर इज़ अ रिलेटेड entity in some other country. Related मतलब कि maybe the parent company or sister company or some company who are working in the same organizations under the same umbrella, तो वो किस price पे they will provide services to the other company. So suppose company A is in India and a related company B is in US. Okay, so at what price does A provide services or goods to B, वो काफ़ी बार disputes पैदा कर सकता है, राइट. एंड देयर यू हैव द प्रोविजन ऑफ सेफ हार्बर. तो अब अगर सेफ हार्बर में सपोज द सेफ हार्बर प्रोविजन इज अराउंड 15%. So if A shows a profit of 15%, then the tax authorities will not bother A. They will say that okay, you are selling it at a 15% profit and we are satisfied with that. So that is safe harbor provisions. These are similar kinds of tax reforms that has been announced by the government. इसमें कुछ specific नहीं है. Some, for example, you have your regular importers with trusted long-standing supply chains to be recognized in the risk system, which means that अगर कुछ importer है, they are trusted. Okay, they have a history of importing goods or services from some place. तो वो रिकॉग्नाइज किया जाएगा एंड मे बी द कंप्लायंसेस और सम the paperwork for them would be reduced. Okay, all right. Next area where a lot of growth opportunity is the MSMEs. Okay, now MSMEs, of course, micro, small and medium enterprises, very important because they account for around 40 to 42% of our workforce, and at the same time have high job creation and of course high component of the overall GDP. तो यहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट का काफ़ी फोकस है. Okay, and there is a three-pronged approach that has been announced by the government. What is this three-pronged approach? एक तो equity support मिलेगा उनको. Okay, equity support, which means that एक SME growth fund which will be established, and this growth fund will provide equity fund to these MSMEs. Okay, also self-reliant India fund को और top up किया जाएगा, उसमें और fund डाला जाएगा so that they are able to invest in various MSMEs. Okay. Second, of course, these MSMEs, because many times these MSMEs are very small and may not have the professional expertise, तो उनको professional expertise provide किया जाएगा through these corporate mitras, which will be in tier 2 and tier 3 towns. Okay, so these corporate mitras will help the MSMEs to meet compliance requirement at affordable cost. Okay, तो जो भी compliance है वो they can get at cheap cost. Okay, third is liquidity support through TREDs. Okay, now MSMEs many times they have liquidity needs. Okay, liquidity मतलब हमेशा उनके पास बहुत ज़्यादा कैश नहीं होता है, कि पैसे की कमी हो जाती है कई बार. This can happen, right? Suppose there is an MSME. Okay, MSME has gotten a contract with a big public sector enterprise. सेंट्रल पब्लिक सेक्टर एंटरप्राइज से बड़ा सा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मिला ही इन्हें, मे बी फॉर समथिंग लाइक क्रिएटिंग और प्रोवाइडिंग टेलीफोन्स. ओके, टेलीफोन सेट्स. अब ऑफ कोर्स देयर इज़ गोइंग टू बी ए जेस्टेशन पीरियड इमीडिएटली, तो वो प्रोवाइड नहीं कर सकते. दे विल हैव टू मैन्युफैक्चर द टेलीफोन सेट्स एंड मे बी 6 months के बाद they will sell to the CPSE and they will get the payment. Now for this 6 months, of course, they need some money, initial money, तो वो ट्रेड्स का यूज़ करेंगे. ओके, सो दे विल गेट अ इनवॉइस. CPC से इनको इनवॉइस मिलेगा और दे विल रेज एन इनवॉइस, राइट. तो दे विल रेज एन इनवॉइस and this invoice they can upload in the TRED portal, जो भी इनका portal होता है. So TRED stands for Trade Receivables Discounting System. तो TRED portal में वो करेंगे and various financial institutions like banks and NBFCs can bid on their invoice. Suppose 100 crore का ये invoice है, okay, so they can, in the trade way, someone will bid 99 crore, someone will bid 98 crore, and whoever bids the highest will give that sum to MSMEs को. Rather than getting 100 crore after 6 months, the MSME is happy to get 99 crore at present time, okay, and that is how this liquidity need is fulfilled. तो इसमें गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत सारे प्रोविजंस और इनिशिएटिव्स दिए हैं. देयर विल बी, दे हैव मेड इट मैंडेटरी, राइट. तो जितने भी सेंट्रल पब्लिक सेक्टर एंटरप्राइजेस हैं उनके लिए ट्रेड्स के थ्रू ट्रांजैक्शन सेटलमेंट करना मैंडेटरी कर दिया गया है. देयर इज ऑल्सो प्रोविजन फॉर क्रेडिट गारंटी सपोर्ट मैकेनिज्म फॉर इनवॉइस डिस्काउंटिंग फ्रॉम ट्रेड्स. तो जो ट्रेड्स ऑफ कोर्स यू नीड सम गारंटी, तो वो एक सेपरेट फंड बनाया गया है, सेपरेट मैकेनिज्म बनाया गया है फॉर गिविंग दैट गारंटी. ऑल्सो जेम पोर्टल विल बी लिंक्ड टू ट्रेड्स. तो जेम पोर्टल इज गवर्नमेंट ई मार्केट प्लेस, राइट. तो जो गवर्नमेंट को वट एवर सर्विसेज गवर्नमेंट वॉन्ट्स टू बाय, इट बाइज फ्रॉम द जेम पोर्टल. तो जेम और ट्रेड को लिंक कर दिया गया है. एंड ऑल्सो दीज ट्रेड रिसीवेबल्स आर असेट बैक्ड. तो दे आर गिवन, they will be established as asset backed securities, okay, and they are a kind of securities because एक underlying asset है उसमें, and then people with these trades receivables will be able to trade it in the secondary market. तो उससे भी liquidity support मिलेगा MSMEs को. So these are the various announcements made for MSMEs. यहाँ पे एक टैक्स प्रपोजल भी दिया गया है. सो द टैक्स प्रपोजल इज रिमूवल ऑफ करंट वैल्यू कैप ऑफ 10 लाख पर कंसाइनमेंट ऑन courier exports. Okay, so right now if an MSME wants to export, okay, तो अगर someone MSME is making something, maybe some toys, okay, if they want to export, they'll have to necessarily export a consignment of 10 lakh. नाउ बहुत सारे MSMEs होते हैं वो काफ़ी छोटे होते हैं, 10 लाख का एक्सपोर्ट एक बार में नहीं कर सकते, ओके. तो एक प्रपोजल किया गया कि उनको जो अभी करंट वैल्यू कैप है 10 लाख का वो रिमूव कर दिया जाएगा. तो इवन स्मॉलर MSMEs विल बी एबल टू एक्सपोर्ट देयर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. ऑलराइट, then the next part is renewing emphasis on service sector. ओके, जो सेकंड कर्तव्य था गवर्नमेंट का, सेकंड कर्तव्य था कि जो पब्लिक एस्पिरेशंस हैं उनको फुलफिल करना है. मेक देम पार्टनर्स इन द ग्रोथ स्टोरी, राइट, एंड दैट विल हैपन इफ दे हैव गुड क्वालिटी जॉब्स, राइट, एंड दैट विल that can come from the services sector. तो services sector में भी काफ़ी नए अनाउंसमेंट किए गए हैं. ओके, देयर विल बी अ कमिटी क्रिएटेड टू फोकस ऑन सर्विस सेक्टर एज को ड्राइवर ऑफ विकसित भारत. ठीक है, हेल्थ में नए इंस्टीट्यूट्स बनाए जाएंगे अलाइड हेल्थ प्रोफेशनल्स के लिए. ऑलराइट, सो ये अलाइड हेल्थ प्रोफेशनल्स कौन होते हैं? Professionals like in disciplines like optometry, radiology, anesthesia, OT technology, applied psychology, behavioral health. तो इन disciplines में more and more professionals को लाया जाएगा through creation of new institutions. So that will open up a new avenue for people to get skilled in and find lucrative jobs. Okay. Then there will be focus on care ecosystem. The care ecosystem is particularly important because, and care ecosystem में जैसे old age care, right, for geriatric care or even care for very young children, newborn children, उनके care के लिए. Now why this is important? Because as India grows, India also grows old. तो old people का जो proportion है वो इंक्रीज होने वाला है, एंड दे विल नीड लॉट ऑफ केयर. Second, of course, as more and more women join the workforce, तो जो women, in our society, women has been mainly involved in caregiving activities at home. So as more and more women join the workforce, there will be a need for more caregivers, and this caregivers को स्किल करने के लिए एक केयर इकोसिस्टम बनाना ज़रूरी है. तो यहाँ पे काफ़ी इनिशिएटिव्स लाए जाएंगे गवर्नमेंट के द्वारा. देन देयर विल बी फोकस ऑन मेडिकल टूरिज्म. मेडिकल टूरिज्म अगेन is a form of tourism which is, I mean, of course, India mein healthcare is very affordable, and therefore a lot of people, particularly a lot of people from Africa or other countries, they come to India to get medical treatment. Now this form of tourism is not season specific, all the year round hota hai, so again it is that important. Also, per person, the amount of expenditure that they do in medical tourism is much higher than a normal tourist who comes to the country, and therefore medical tourism में काफ़ी फोकस है. 5 हब बनाए जाएंगे of medical value tourism. Alright, then again a lot of focus on Ayush. Ayush, of course, has gained popularity all over the world, particularly after our honorable Prime Minister introducing yoga in the United Nations. उसके बाद लोगों में काफ़ी awareness आया, इसका पॉपुलैरिटी बढ़ा है. सो देर विल बी मोर क्रिएशन ऑफ ऑल इंडिया इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ आयुर्वेदा. जो आयुष फार्मेसीज है, ड्रग टेस्टिंग लैब्स है, उसको अपग्रेड किया जाएगा. ओके, तो ऑल दैट थिंग्स विल बी डन. देन अनदर एरिया वेयर a lot of focus is there is orange economy. Now orange economy, I think, could be quite important for your prelims examination, because the term has been in news quite a lot. Orange economy is the creative economy, right? जो content creators हैं, the content creators who are creating things, content for social media, even making movies, even live performance art, all these things are being done. तो वो that is all part of orange economy. So इसमें the government has announced setting up of AVGC content creator labs. Okay, now this AVGC stands for animation, visual effects, gaming and comics. Okay, and उसके लिए content creator labs बनाए जाएंगे to give more impetus to the orange economy. Okay, then design may be, again there will be setting up of new National Institute of Design. Okay, in eastern region, क्योंकि eastern region में design के institutes नहीं है. Again focus on sports. Okay, तो sports goods पे manufacturing का भी focus है. Even sports as a sector only, there is of course Khelo India mission, but apart from that there will be systematic coaching development. So a lot of coaches, support staffs, that they will be skilled and developed, and integration of science and tech and sports infrastructure in the country, so that more and more talent comes out of India and hopefully brings in some more medals for the country in Asian Games and Olympics. Then of course the focus of the government is on education also. Education में 5 यूनिवर्सिटी टाउनशिप्स बनाई जाएंगी. ओके, देन गर्ल्स हॉस्टल इन एवरी डिस्ट्रिक्ट फॉर हायर एजुकेशन स्टेम इंस्टीट्यूशंस. बिकॉज अभी राइट नाउ क्या होता है कि मैनी ऑफ द गर्ल्स in these STEM institutions have prolonged long hours of study, laboratory work, which can be challenging for some girl students. So these hostels will be created, and again there will be setting up of 4 telescope infrastructure facilities to promote astrophysics, astronomy. In fact, our honorable finance minister took name of 4 telescope infrastructure facilities that will be set up. एक national large solar telescope, national large optical infrared telescope, Himalayan Chandra telescope, and Cosmos 2 planetarium. Okay, Out of these, the first three are in Ladakh, and the Cosmos 2 planetarium is in Kolkata, right? So again, could be important for a prelims examination. Okay. And the last services sector which the government is focusing a lot is in tourism. Okay. Of course, tourism has a lot of potential in India, and all type of tourism, right from spiritual tourism, religious tourism, nature tourism, adventure tourism, all the tourism, lot of scope is there. So there will be setting up of National Institute of Hospitality. 10,000 guides will be upskilled in 20 iconic tourist sites. Okay. Then there will be a national destination digital knowledge grid to digitally document the places of significance. Okay. So nowadays, you know, there are some places where you can just rather than visiting the place physically, you can just wear a 3D wearable, and you know, you can be virtually transported to that place. तो वो भी these digital documentation of these places are also important. Okay. Then there is focus on developing mountain trails, turtle trails, bird watching trails. In fact, some names were taken by Honorable Finance Minister here. So I'll write down the names because this could be important for a prelims examination. Is Araku Valley in Eastern Ghat. Eastern Ghat. Then Podhigai Malai in Western Ghat. Western Ghat. Turtle trails in coastal areas, bird watching trails in Pulikat Lake in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. Pulikat Lake in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. Okay. In fact, I think Pulikat Lake has been asked in one of the years. पूछा जा चुका है, but since again these new places has been mentioned in the budget, तो important है, तो इनके बारे में देख लेना. Okay. India, of course, has also established an international big cat alliance, right? 2024 में, तो उसका first global big cat summit होगा इंडिया में. Then also focusing on developing 15 archaeological sites. In 15 archaeological sites, again the finance minister took some names, so again that can be important. तो वो मैं यहाँ पे लिख देता हूँ. The names taken by the finance minister here was Lothal, okay, Dholavira, Rakhigadi. तो ये generally the Indus Valley civilization के sites हैं, but could be other sites also. Adi Chanalur, Sarnath, Hastinapur, and Leh Palace. Okay, so now since these names were mentioned in the budget speech, you have to know about them. Then there was announcement made for development of Buddhist circuit in Northeast region. Okay, यहाँ भी some name was taken. Let me find this real quick for you. Okay. Buddhist site in Northeast region. Finance minister said that Northeast region is a civilizational confluence of Theravada and Mahayana Vajrayana traditions. Okay. तो again इनके बारे में पढ़ लेना. What is Theravada Vajrayana and what is the difference between them? again could be important for your prelims examination. So these Buddhist circuits will be developed in the northeast region. Okay. Now some tax reforms were announced to boost the services sector. What are these tax reforms? Uh, Clubbing of services under a single category of information technology services. Okay. विथ कॉमन सेफ हार्बर मार्जिन ऑफ 15.5%. तो पहले क्या होता था कि बहुत सारे जो सर्विसेज थे वो अलग अलग कैटेगरीज में थे, तो उनको अब मिला के, बिकॉज दे आर वेरियस ओवरलैपिंग सर्विसेज, राइट. जैसे सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट सर्विसेज, पहले सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट सर्विसेज होता था, आईटी एनेबल्ड सर्विसेज, नॉलेज प्रोसेसिंग आउटसोर्सिंग सर्विसेज, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट R&D सर्विसेज. तो अब इनको क्लब करके एक इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी सर्विसेज बना दिया गया है, एंड ऑल हैव अ कॉमन सेफ हार्बर मार्जिन. सेफ हार्बर मार्जिन आई हैव ऑलरेडी डिस्कस्ड. ओके. देन अनदर वन ऑफ इम्पोर्टेंस वाज फास्ट ट्रैकिंग यूनिलैटरल एडवांस प्राइसिंग एग्रीमेंट. तो जिन को एडवांस प्राइसिंग एग्रीमेंट करना है, ओके, दे डोंट वांट टू फॉल इनटू कॉमन सेफ हार्बर मार्जिन, want to conclude an advanced pricing agreement. What is APA? Again, you can go to Indian Economy Handbook and look there. तो जो ये APA उनको फास्ट ट्रैक किया जाएगा फॉर IT सर्विसेज. ओके. एंड दिस अगेन इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. दिस वन इज दैट देयर विल बी टैक्स हॉलीडेज अंटिल 2047. अगर एक फॉरेन कंपनीज, ओके, इंडिया बेस्ड डेटा सेंटर सर्विसेज के थ्रू फॉरेन ग्लोबल कस्टमर्स को क्लाउड सर्विस प्रोवाइड करती है, तो उनको टैक्स हॉलीडेज मिलेगा. ओके. सो इंडिया वांट्स मोर एंड मोर पीपल टू सेट अप डेटा सेंटर्स इन द कंट्री. ऑलराइट. टॉकिंग अबाउट next, let's come to the financial sector. Okay. The financial sector, of course, is very important to bring or take all the savings from the households and give it to the more productive sections of the economy for creating more businesses, creating value for the economy. तो वहाँ पे फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट होता है. तो यहाँ पे एक हाई लेवल कमेटी ऑन बैंकिंग फॉर विकसित भारत ये सेटअप किया जाएगा. ठीक है. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, एंड दिस इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड्स को बहुत बढ़ावा दिया जाएगा, राइट. कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड्स, बिकॉज यू विल नोटिस दैट इंडिया में पीपल ईदर डिपॉजिट देयर सेविंग्स इन द बैंक or they go to the capital market, stock market, and buy shares or stocks. जो shares and stocks होते हैं, these are equity investments. Okay. And people are not investing as much in corporate bonds. Okay. And corporate bonds may the government bonds, the corporate bond also to be a very वाइब्रेंट मार्केट बनाना चाहते हैं उसे. ओके. ना राइट नो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इज दैट बिकॉज नॉट मैनी पीपल आर इन्वेस्टिंग इन कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड, तो लोगों को लगता है कि अगर कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड ले लेंगे और कभी बेचना चाहे तो किसको बेचेंगे, कोई खरीदने के लिए रेडी नहीं होगा, राइट. तो गवर्नमेंट विल डू इज दे विल इंट्रोड्यूस मार्केट मेकिंग फ्रेमवर्क. ओके. जैसे गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज़ में देर आर प्राइमरी डीलर्स जिनका काम होता है, दे फंक्शन एज मार्केट मेकर्स. तो कोई भी बेचना चाहे, कोई भी खरीदना चाहे, तो दे आर ऑलवेज रेडी टू बाय एंड सेल. So similarly, there should be some market making framework in corporate bonds also. So there is always liquidity in the corporate bond market. Okay. Also, total return swaps will also be available. Now swaps, to understand swaps, you can see the derivative section in the financial sector का जो chapter है Indian Economy Handbook में. So swaps is nothing but, जैसे सपोज swaps is a type of derivative. Okay. तो जो भी derivative होता है उसका एक underlying asset होता है. तो underlying asset here will be the corporate bond. And there are two parties, suppose A and B. तो कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड में जो प्रॉफिट होगा पार्टी ए विल गिव दैट टू पार्टी बी एंड पार्टी बी विल गिव अ फिक्स्ड interest to party A. So this is again a type of derivative which investors can utilize to hedge their risks, right? So that will be that has been announced in the budget. Apart from that, there will be review of FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act, because again the government wants the country to attract more and more foreign investment. तो उसमें FEMA को अगर रिव्यू करके थोड़ा सा उसको मोर इन्वेस्टर फ्रेंडली बनाया जा सके तो दैट द गवर्नमेंट विल डू. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट द गवर्नमेंट हैज ऑल्सो announced incentive for issuance of municipal bonds, okay, of more than 1000 crore. तो अगर 1000 crore का municipal bond कोई municipality issue करती है तो they'll get an incentive of 100 crore. Here some tax proposals are there for the financial sector, and this again is quite, I'm sure will be quite discussed in the social media and in news channels, because ये traders को direct affect करता है, right? जो security transaction tax है on futures has been increased from 0.02% to 0.05%, okay? So 150% का raise किया गया है. तो ये जो सिक्योरिटी ट्रांजैक्शन टैक्स होता है, फ्यूचर्स, ऑफ कोर्स फ्यूचर्स you all must know, and the SEBI time and again has been warning the investors in investing very wisely in futures, क्योंकि futures में 9 out of 10% actually experience losses, तो काफ़ी लॉस हो जाता है लोगों को. तो इसमें काफ़ी प्रूडेंस और समझदारी की ज़रूरत होती है. तो इसमें इनफैक्ट सिक्योरिटी ट्रांजैक्शन टैक्स विच इज़ द टैक्स लेविड ऑन ईच ट्रांजैक्शन ऑफ फ्यूचर्स, तो वो इंक्रीज कर दिया गया है. सो दिस विल बी अ डिसइंसेंटिव, राइट, फॉर ट्रेडर्स टू इन्वेस्ट इन फ्यूचर्स. सिमिलरली जो ऑप्शंस में जो सिक्योरिटी ट्रांजैक्शन टैक्स लगता था वो भी इंक्रीज कर दिया गया है. Okay, so options में of course you have to pay a premium, and when you exercise the option then also you have to pay some security transaction tax, so that has been increased. तो कितना increase किया, I don't think that will be important, but at least you should know what security transaction tax is, what futures is, what options is. Okay, now next part, the third kartavya of the government is to embark on a path of inclusive growth, right? Sabka saath sabka vikas. And here the first demographic that is going to be there is of course farmers. Okay, farmers का income increase करना है. Farmers of course around 46%, 45 to 46% of the workforce is involved in agriculture, while they only contribute around 16 to 17% to the GDP. तो उनका प्रोडक्टिविटी बहुत कम है, उनका इनकम कम है, तो वो इम्प्रूव करना है. तो व्हाट आर द वेरियस प्रोविजंस हियर? एक डेडिकेटेड प्रोग्राम फॉर हॉर्टिकल्चर हैज़ बीन अनाउंस्ड. ये डेडिकेटेड प्रोग्राम फॉर हॉर्टिकल्चर क्या होगा? ऑफ कोर्स हॉर्टिकल्चर इज more and more encouraged by the government, right? So they are saying that rather than growing wheat and rice, you grow fruit and vegetables. एक of course crop diversification होगा. Second of course income increase होगा, because you can demand higher price for your fruit and vegetables rather than rice and wheat. Okay, तो यहाँ पे walnut, almond, pine nuts का जो cultivation है that will be encouraged. Here again I wanted to tell you something. Okay, yes, so high value crops में the finance minister in a budget speech she announced that coconut, sandalwood, cocoa and cashew is grown in coastal areas, right? Then agar trees in northeast, in fact I'll write it down here: coconut, sandalwood, कोकोआ एंड कैशियो, ये कोस्टल एरियाज में होते हैं. अगर ट्री found in northeast, and then almonds, walnuts, pine nuts, these are grown in hilly regions. एंड आई थिंक एक मैच द फॉलोइंग टाइप का क्वेश्चन बन सकता है तुम्हारे प्रीलिम्स एग्जामिनेशन में, तो ये एक ध्यान रखना. ओके, देन एनिमल हस्बेंड्री. ऑफ कोर्स एनिमल हस्बेंड्री में increases the income of the farmers, also acts as an insurance for them. तो यहाँ पे schemes है for establishment of veterinary and paravet colleges, vet hospital, diagnostic labs, breeding facilities in the private sector. तो ये सारा किया जाएगा. Then coconut promotion scheme. In fact, India is the world's largest producer of coconuts. ये ध्यान रखना. तो एक coconut promotion scheme लाया जा रहा है. Then डेडिकेटेड प्रोग्राम फॉर कैश एंड कोकोआ. ठीक है. फिशरीज में डेवलपमेंट ऑफ फिश रिजर्वॉयर्स, अमृत सरोवर्स. ओके, इनकरेजिंग फिश एफपीओज, फिश फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, तो वो सारा इनकरेज किया जाएगा फॉर फिशरीज. देन सैंडलवुड का जो कल्टिवेशन है, पोस्ट हार्वेस्ट प्रोसेसिंग, उसके लिए कुछ प्रोविजंस है. एंड दिस अगेन आई थिंक शुड बी इम्पॉर्टेंट फॉर योर प्रीलिम्स पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. भारत विस्तार हैज बीन अनाउंस्ड. व्हाट इज भारत विस्तार? इट इज एन इनिशिएटिव which will be an integration of all agri-tech, okay, and will be using artificial intelligence, okay, and that will help increase farm productivity, will enable better decisions for farmers, and reduce risk for providing customized advisory support to farmers. तो ये भारत विस्तार करेगा. एंड तो नाम अगेन यू विल हैव टू रिमेंबर एंड क्या काम करता है, बिकॉज अगेन काफ़ी अच्छा नाम है, राइट? सुनने में अच्छा लगता है, भारत विस्तार. एंड एट द सेम टाइम डज नॉट डायरेक्टली गिव यू अ हिंट कि किस रीज़न के लिए लाया गया ये, तो कैन मेक अ गुड मल्टीपल चॉइस क्वेश्चन इन योर प्रीलिम्स एग्जाम. नाउ इन द फार्मिंग में some tax proposals are there to make it more easier for the farmers. एक तो जो इंडियन फिशिंग वेसल्स हैं, ओके, वो जो एक्सक्लूसिव इकोनॉमिक जोन में जो फिश कैच करेंगे, और इवन द हाई सीज आउटसाइड ऑफ द एक्सक्लूसिव इकोनॉमिक जोन, उनको ड्यूटी फ्री कर दिया गया. सो दैट इज़ अगेन एन इंसेंटिव to them, and some deduction exemptions are being given to cooperative societies to, from these cooperative societies more and more farmers can take benefit. So all that is there. Okay, then let's come to the foundation of growth, strengthening the foundation of growth. जो हम growth achieve करना चाह रहे हैं, high growth rate of 7% for several years, or even higher growth rate. How will that happen? One, of course, is when we develop good infrastructure. Okay, तो infrastructure और कैसे develop होगा? So here several initiatives already been taken by the government, जैसे INVETs है, infrastructure investment trusts, या फिर REITs है, real estate investment trust. तो these are इन्वेस्टमेंट फंड्स, राइट? इन्वेस्टमेंट फंड्स, तो इवन स्मॉल इन्वेस्टर्स जो अपना इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर या रियल एस्टेट में इन्वेस्ट करना चाहते हैं, दे कैन कंट्रीब्यूट टू दिस फंड्स एंड दैट विल लीड टू क्रिएशन ऑफ मोर एंड मोर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. द नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड है, नाफिड है, ऑल दीज विल लीड टू क्रिएशन ऑफ मोर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन द कंट्री. फिर नाउ द गवर्नमेंट इन द बजट हैज सेड दैट कि अगर अब हमारा फोकस टीयर 2 एंड टीयर 3 पे जाने वाला है, ओके, जिनका पॉपुलेशन 5 लाख से ऊपर है. कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर भी गवर्नमेंट ने काफ़ी बढ़ा दिया दिस ईयर. द कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर इज 12.2 लाख करोड़. ओके, हाइएस्ट सो फार. एंड जो इफेक्टिव कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर विच इज कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर प्लस द ग्रांट्स गिवन टू स्टेट्स फॉर क्रिएशन ऑफ कैपिटल एसेट्स, तो वो मिला के अराउंड 17 लाख करोड़ हो जाएगा. So that again is good news. So more infrastructure will be created in the country. The next infrastructure risk guarantee fund will be set up. New freight corridors बनाया जाएगा from Dankuni in east. जो Dankuni is in West Bengal to Surat in West. Surat is in Gujarat. तो वहाँ से वहाँ तक एक नया freight corridor अनाउंस किया गया है. Then 20 new waterways. शिप रिपेयर इकोसिस्टम. इनफैक्ट 2 शिप रिपेयर अनाउंस किए हैं. वन इज वाराणसी एंड वन इन पटना, राइट. वाराणसी एंड पटना, तो ये 2 याद रख लेना, थोड़ा ध्यान रख लेना. ओके. देन कोस्टल कार्गो प्रमोशन स्कीम. Then a seaplane VGF scheme. VGF is viability gap funding, right? So we want to indigenize the manufacturing of seaplanes. Okay, planes जो sea में land कर सकते हैं, right? तो उनके लिए एक स्कीम लॉन्च किया जाएगा. Then SASKI scheme. SASKI stands for जो स्टेट्स को ग्रांट दिया जाता है फॉर क्रिएशन ऑफ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. इसका फुल फॉर्म, let me find the full form. SASKI is Special Assistance to State for Capital Investment. Okay, so that scheme के अंदर 2 लाख करोड़ का सपोर्ट दिया जाएगा टू स्टेट्स. एंड देन अ पूर्वोदया फॉर डेवलपमेंट ऑफ इंटीग्रेटेड ईस्ट कोस्ट इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर. सो पूर्वोदया एंड इसका जो नोडल होगा वो होगा दुर्गापुर विच इज़ इन वेस्ट बंगाल. एंड पूर्वोदया विल इन्वॉल्व द 5 eastern states. So Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. So those states will be covered in this industrial corridor. Okay. Next is, of course, to achieve or strengthen the foundation of growth, we also want to ensure, क्योंकि अगर अगेन इंडिया को इतने हाई रेट पे ग्रो करना है तो एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी बहुत ज़रूरी है. तो सम अनाउंसमेंट्स हियर, जैसे एक स्कीम लाया जाएगा टू अडॉप्ट कार्बन कैप्चर यूटिलाइजेशन एंड स्टोरेज. ओके, तो जितना भी पोल्यूटिंग, पर्टिकुलरली द पोल्यूटिंग इंडस्ट्रीज जैसे आयरन, स्टील, ये सब हो गया, तो वहाँ से जो कार्बन कैप्चर किया जाता है उसको यूटिलाइज किया जाता है. तो मे बी टू मेक समथिंग ब्रिक्स और समथिंग, या स्टोर करने के लिए. देन जो बेसिक कस्टम ड्यूटी है वो एग्जाम्प्ट किया जाएगा फॉर सोडियम एंटीमोनेट. आई थिंक दिस कैन ऑल्सो बी इम्पोर्टेंट फॉर योर प्रीलिम्स एग्जामिनेशन. सोडियम एंटीमोनेट यूज़ किया जाता है फॉर मैन्युफैक्चर ऑफ सोलर ग्लास. ओके. देन custom duty will be exempted for importing capital goods required for processing critical minerals. Okay, so this again is important for our energy security. So a lot of tax relaxations is also, tax incentives are also given. जैसे lithium ion cells manufacture के लिए again tax incentive, custom duty exemptions for nuclear power projects, for biogas blended CNG. तो CNG में biogas blend किया जाता है, तो that biogas again will be exempted from central excise duty. So lot of tax incentives given by the government to ensure our long-term energy security. Next is urbanization. Okay, so of course the cities are our center of economic activities, right? तो उनको अर्बनाइज किया. एंड पर्टिकुलरली द फोकस इज ऑन tier 2, tier 3 cities and temple towns. Okay, and here the government has announced these growth connectors, high speed rail corridors बनाया जाएगा between these cities, मुंबई, पुणे, हैदराबाद, all these cities में these high speed rail corridors will be created. Okay, next is जो development है, how those development can be provided to the most disadvantaged sections of the society. तो people centric development में, तो one of course building strong care ecosystem, this we have already discussed. Then she marts. Okay, तो जैसे you must know that जो लखपति दीदी प्रोग्राम था, तो that helped the members of self help groups to gain become entrepreneurs, gain employment, or gain some or make some gainful income. So they became lakpatis. Now the next logical step is creation of some help them create community owned retail outlets, so they become business owners. Okay, तो उसके लिए इनको शी मार्ट्स बोला जाएगा. Then for disabled, Divyangjan Kaushal Yojana for imparting skill development to industry relevant skills. Divyangjan Sahara Yojana to give them high quality assistive devices. Okay. जो for example maybe some what is it called? Let me check. Artificial limbs, right? Artificial limbs or some assistive hearing devices, or anything that will be provided to them. Then you can say setting up of NIMHANS. NIMHANS is of course National Institute for Mental Health and Neurosciences, right? So wo NIMHANS 2 will be set up. Mental Health Institute in Ranchi and Tejpur. Tejpur is in Assam, Ranchi is in Jharkhand. Right, so all these will be set up so as to ensure a more people-centric development. So even people who are most disadvantaged, like the elderly or the women, in particular in rural areas, or the disabled, or people suffering from mental health issues, they will be brought in and made part of the economic growth. Okay, next is of course trust based governance. तो इनके बारे में डिस्कस किया है. जो इंटरनेशनल, इवन द इंटरनेशनल एक्सपीरियंस हैज बीन दैट गवर्नमेंट्स हु rather than always seeing the citizens with a suspicious eye and imposing penalties or punishing them for maybe some not so very basic flouting of rules. So all those creates an atmosphere of fear and is not good for the efficiency of the economy. So rather than that, there should be trust based. The government should be trusting its citizens. Okay, so that is trust based governance. So various announcement made here. I think the important, maybe this could be important. जो रेगुलर हमने डिस्कस भी किया है, रेगुलर इम्पोर्टर्स विथ ट्रस्टेड लॉन्ग स्टैंडिंग सप्लाई चेन्स विल बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड इन द रिस्क सिस्टम. तो जैसे जो इम्पोर्टर्स हैं who are regularly importing, so their trust, their credibility will be recognized, and they will be their need for verification of their cargo every time can be minimized. So not every time their cargo will be verified. Okay, and overall some digital assessment systems, so that you're not at the whims and fancies of some officers who may decide arbitrarily to make life difficult for you. So that is trust based governance. Then again, the government wants to make as we move towards Viksit Bharat by 2047, the government wants to create ease of doing business. Businesses should find it easy to do business or to conduct their activities in the economy, and ease of living. So a lot of announcement made towards that. I have identified few जो कि important हो सकते हैं. So one is of course reduced TCS rate on sale of overseas tour package, tour program package. तो TCS होता है tax cut at source. Okay, तो जैसे कोई सिटीजन है wants to go to टूर फॉरेन कंट्रीज, राइट, टूरिज्म के लिए. तो जब वो टूर पैकेज खरीदता है तो एक टैक्स कट एट सोर्स होता है, तो उसको कम कर दिया गया है, राइट. अर्लियर इट वॉज 5% एंड 20% फॉर डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ पैकेजेस, हैज़ बिन रिड्यूस्ड टू 2%. ओके, सो अगेन इट मेक्स लिविंग ease, contributes to ease of living. Okay, then immunity from penalty and prosecution in case of underreporting extended to misreporting. तो पहले क्या था कि अगर तुमने अपना जो इनकम है उसको अंडर रिपोर्ट किया तो यू वुड नॉट बी पेनलाइज्ड और प्रोसिक्यूटेड, right? Because this can be an honest mistake also. So rather than that, you will be given an opportunity to again pay taxes, maybe at a certain higher rate, but at least you will not be penalized or prosecuted. तो इसको misreporting के लिए भी ला दिया गया है. Alright. Then certain provisions are decriminalized. Okay. Which again contributes towards trust-based governance and ease of living. Okay. So immunity from prosecution in certain places. This can be important. Tax buyback for all type of shares. All type of share holders will now be treated as capital gains, and promoters will pay an additional buyback tax. Okay, so let me explain this. ये क्या है? So whenever someone buys shares of a company, okay, when you buy shares, दो तरीके से तुम्हें प्रॉफिट हो सकता है. वन इज थ्रू डिविडेंड, द कंपनी मेक्स प्रॉफिट एंड कंपनी गिव्स डिविडेंड्स टू इट्स शेयर होल्डर्स. सेकेंड इज कैपिटल गेन्स. द वैल्यू ऑफ द शेयर इट सेल्फ राइजेस, एंड जब तुम उसको सेकेंडरी मार्केट में बेच दोगे तो यूल गेट सम कैपिटल गेन्स. नाउ ऑफ कोर्स डिविडेंड एंड कैपिटल गेन्स बोथ विल बी टैक्स्ड. ओके, सो व्हाट loophole, many companies found that कि rather than giving dividends they will do buyback. Okay, इसमें क्या होगा, जो कंपनी ने शेयर्स दिए हैं शेयर होल्डर्स है, तो कंपनी विल बाय बैक दैट शेयर्स फ्रॉम द शेयर होल्डर्स. ओके, सो इससे क्या हो रहा है कि rather than companies giving dividends, तो company are no longer giving dividends, rather than companies buying back the shares. Okay, and the shareholder is don't have to pay taxes क्योंकि buybacks में taxes नहीं थे. तो ये एक लूप होल था जिसका फ़ायदा उठाते थे बहुत लोग. तो now the government has said that जो buyback है now that will be treated as capital gains and उस पर टैक्स लगाया जाएगा. ओके, एंड जो प्रोमोटर्स होते हैं कंपनीज, ऑल्सो नोन एज प्रोमोटर्स, उनको एक एडिशनल बायबैक्स टैक्स देना पड़ेगा. सो दिस विल इंसेंटिवाइज दिस लूप होल, मेकिंग यूज ऑफ दिस बायबैक लूप होल दैट वॉज देयर. ओके, another thing that I think could be important is this tax reform, that is MAT मिनिमम ऑल्टरनेटिव टैक्स जो होता है उसमें जो क्रेडिट मिलता था उसको आई थिंक डिसकंटिन्यू कर दिया गया है. ओके, व्हाट एग्जैक्टली इज दिस, अगेन आई विल एक्सप्लेन यू. तो जैसे जो कंपनीज होते हैं, ओके, कंपनीज हैव टू पे कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स, लेकिन अगर कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स मिनिमम ऑल्टरनेटिव टैक्स से कम है देन दे पे मिनिमम ऑल्टरनेटिव टैक्स, राइट. तो कंपनीज पहले मिनिमम ऑल्टरनेटिव टैक्स मैट पहले पे कर देती है, एंड बाद में अगर उनका टैक्स उससे कम होता है तो दे यूज टू गेट मैट क्रेडिट, एंड मैट क्रेडिट कुड बी यूटिलाइज्ड टू पे टैक्सेस इन द नेक्स्ट ईयर. ओके, now this again is a loophole that was exploited by many companies. So now the government has said that जो मैट क्रेडिट है, ओके, उससे you cannot pay the whole tax, but you can pay only 1/4 of the tax liability. Okay, for example, if I have a tax liability of suppose 20 crore, then you can utilize max credit of only 5 crore. 5 crore, and this is for only the current MAT credit that companies have, and future में मैट को फाइनल टैक्स बना दिया गया, तो देर विल बी नो मैट क्रेडिट इन द फ्यूचर. ओके, तो मैट क्रेडिट खत्म कर दिया. एंड मैट का पहले 15% होता था, 15% से कम करके नाउ इट इज जस्ट 14%. ओके, तो 1% कम कर दिया गया है मैट को. देन फॉर सो मैट tax buyback again will lead to more ease of doing business. Okay, then for customs duty on medicines for cancer patient उनको exempt किया गया. तो ठीक है, ये बहुत सारे ड्रग्स को हर साल exempt किया जाता है, तो और सारे ड्रग्स को exempt किया गया है. Single and interconnected digital window for cargo clearance approvals. Okay, again this is a step towards ease of doing business. कि पहले बहुत सारे compliances होते थे, अब वो single window कर दिया गया ताकि more and more trade takes place. And this announcement has been made that in 2 years a custom integrated system will be rolled out. Okay, so the discretionary actions taken by various custom officials जिसके कारण बहुत corruption होता है, बहुत inefficiencies आ जाती है system में, so that to a large extent will be reduced and a custom integrated system roll out किया जाएगा. Okay, an honest taxpayer willing to settle disputes will now be able to close cases by paying an additional amount in lieu of penalty. So rather than charging a penalty from taxpayers जो maybe some disputes में आ गए हैं, उनको option दिया जाएगा that they can pay an additional amount and close the case. So again this will give rise to more ease of living, more ease of doing business. All right, so these are the various provisions that and announcements that was made in the budget. So I have also discussed what are the various things that can be useful particularly for your prelims exam, but some of these can be also utilized in your mains exam. All right, that's it from me. Thank you very much.